Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharadhari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jai Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol Jaya Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Pravjagacharya Ashtottara Shata Shri Srimad Srila Abhay Charananda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Thakur Haridas Ki Jai Prem Se Koho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Ganga Devi Ki Jai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Rani Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Harinama Sankirtana Ki Jai Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai Shri Shri Krishna Balarama Ki Jai Shri Shri Lalita Vishakha Sahita Radha Shyama Sundara Ki Jai Go Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashta Prayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishne Swadhamopagate Dhanamajnanadibhisah Kalaunashtadrishamesha Puranarko Dhunodita Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 23, and today we will read text 39 and text 40. What do you have on the board? Both of them, okay. Drishtva Strinam Bhagavati Krishne Bhaktim Alaukikim Atmanam Cha Taya Hinam Anutapta Vyagarhayan Drishtva Strinam Bhagavati Krishne Bhaktim Alaukikim Atmanam Chatayahinam Anutapta Vyagarhayan Drishtva Strinam Bhagavati Krishne Bhaktim Alaukikim Atmanam Chatayahinam Anutapta Vyagarhayan Drishtva Strinam Bhagavati Krishne Bhaktim Alaukikim Atmanam Chatayahinam Anutapta Vyagarhayan Bhagavati Krishne Bhaktim Alaukikim Atmanam Chatayahinam Anutapta Vyagarhayan Drishtva Strinam Bhagavati Krishne Bhaktim Alaukikim Atmanam Chatayahinam Anutapta Vyagarhayan. I'm going to go through the next verse. We can also chant that, but let's hear the translation first. Taking note of their wives' pure transcendental devotion for Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and seeing their own lack of devotion, the Brahmanas felt most sorrowful and began to condemn themselves. We don't have any purport here, so we'll continue on. There are some commentaries we can discuss later, but for now we'll chant text number 40. Dhigjanmanastrvrityatat Dhigvratam Dhigbahugyatam Dhikulam Dhikriyadakshyam Vimukhayetvadhokshaje धिग्जन्मनस्त्रिवृद्यत्तत् धिग्व्रतं धिग्बहुज्ञतां धिक्कुलं धिक्क्रियादाक्ष्यं विमुखाये त्वथोक्षजे धिग्जन्मनस्त्रिवृद्यत्तत् धिग्व्रतं धिग्बहुज्ञतां धिक्कुलं धिक्क्रियादाक्ष्यं विमुखाये त्वथोक्षजे धिग्जन्मनस्त्रिवृद्यत्तत् धिग्व्रतं धिग्बहुज्ञतां धिक्कुलं धिक्क्रियादाक्ष्यं विमुखाये त्वथोक्षजे धिग्जन्मनस्त्रिवृद्यत्तत् धिग्व्रतं धिग्बहुज्ञतां धिक्कुलं धिक्क्रियादाक्ष्यं विमुखाये त्वथोक्षजे. Mataji's, anyone? धिग्जन्मनस्त्रिवृद्यत्तत् धिग्व्रतं धिग्बहुज्ञतां धिक्कुलं धिक्क्रियादाक्ष्यं विमुखाये त्वथोक्षजे. Okay. Dhik, to hell. Janma, with the birth. Nah, our. Trivrit, threefold. The first from physical parents. The second at the time of Brahminical initiation. And the third at the time of initiation into the performances of Vedic sacrifice. Yet that, whatever. Dhik, to hell. Vratam, with our vow of celibacy. Dhik, to hell. Bahugnatam, with our extensive knowledge. Dhik, to hell. Kulam, with our aristocratic lineage. Dhik, to hell. Kriyadakshyam, with our expertise in ritualistic activities. Vimukha, inimical. Ye, who. To, however. Athokshaje, to the transcendental personality of Godhead. The Brahmana said, to hell with our threefold birth, our vow of celibacy, and our extensive learning. To hell with our aristocratic background and our expertise in the rituals of sacrifice. These are all condemned because we were inimical to the transcendental personality of Godhead. Please repeat. The Brahmana said, to hell with our threefold birth, our vow of celibacy, and our extensive learning. To hell with our aristocratic background and our expertise in the rituals of sacrifice. These are all condemned because we were inimical to the transcendental personality of Godhead. There's a short purport here by the servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. As explained in the definitions above, the words trivrit janma, or threefold birth, refer to 1, physical birth, 2, Brahminical initiation, and 3, initiation into the performance of Vedic sacrifice. Everything is useless if one is ignorant of the absolute truth, the Supreme Lord, Krishna. Om Ajnanatimirantasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantigam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Madgavira Bigopala Swikuryat Kripaya Yadi Tadaivasam Payaha Pitva Rishayustat Priyajanaha Lakshmi Nivasa Madhusudana Madhava Tvam Devi Prasida Mama Buddhi Bharam Dadasva Yasmadaham Kila Vibho Tava Balakelim Samvarnaye cha Satatam Pranipata Purvam. Here we have the Brahmins have come to their senses finally. According to some, when their demigod worship was successful, the demigods intimated to them that this boy is actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so now they're really feeling a little bit like Indra felt after stealing Govardhan Hill, or like Brahma felt after hiding the cowherd boys, or as Shatrajit felt after having gone through so much hassle to get the Syamantaka jewel, and then Krishna gave it to him. So sometimes the Lord, He knows how to deal with us in a way that we come to our senses. Here the word is used, anutapta. They felt anutapa. Anutapa. Tapa means you burn once, but anutapa means you burn at every step. You're feeling really remorseful or repentant about something wrong that you know you've done. Nobody here or anywhere else can say that they haven't done something wrong. Sometimes we do wrong things. We know that they're wrong things, and still we do them because we're conditioned souls. So, vyagarhayat. It's said that one should neither praise nor criticize a person's conditional nature and the activities that extend from that nature, and logically the flaws that that nature also includes. One should neither praise those things nor criticize them, but it's natural. Anutaptavya garhayan. Here they're feeling that. So Sridhar Swami doesn't give any commentary on this verse. Sanatana Goswami, however, says, the husbands saw their wives' bhakti for the Supreme Lord. He reminds us here, Shukdev Goswami, that who we're talking about. This is not only Krishna, this is Bhagavan Krishna. Just like Srila Prabhupada, have you noticed? Every single page, even if it's not there in the Sanskrit, Srila Prabhupada will say, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just so that we don't forget, because it's very easy to forget. Even great Brahmins, even demigods, sages also, when they actually see Krishna, they may not recognize. So who are we dealing with? Tulasi is sangsara mein sabse miliya bhai, na jane kis roop mein narayana mil jaye. So this is their revelation. They've had their epiphany, and so they're feeling tremendous remorse, and they're blaspheming themselves. That's what it means, actually. That one of the commentators, I forget which one, he's saying, instead of Vyagarhanyan, he says Vinindayan. Same idea. So, this is what Sanatana Goswami says. The Lord was the attractor of all hearts because he revealed his unlimited powers. And they condemn themselves with rejection of their pride. That's one way to see it, or he gives an alternative here. He says, not only did they lament, but they criticized themselves, we've already mentioned. So, alokikim bhaktim, it's described, bhaktim alokikim. These women had what kind of bhakti? Alokiki bhakti. What does alokika mean? Otherworldly, not of this world. Just like anyone who saw Srila Prabhupada, immediately you know, immediately, this is not a person who belongs in this place. It's immediate. When I first saw Srila Prabhupada, he walked into the Los Angeles temple room and he lit up the whole room brighter than the sun god. I don't know how he did it. There was nothing really, Srila Prabhupada didn't do anything extraordinary. Everything he did was the usual things that a person does, but somehow or other there was just something about him that was quite clearly alokiki. So these women had such bhakti, out of this world, you might say, bhakti. So Sanatana Goswami says there's a few reasons that we consider their bhakti as alokiki. One, they rejected everything in this world. For that reason, alokiki. Not interested in anything worldly. Not only this world, iha, but also there, in the next life. Paratracha means Svargaloka. Their husbands were worshiping demigods in order to be elevated to Svargaloka, but these women didn't care a fig about any of these things. They were interested in Krishna and Balaram. So therefore their devotion was alokiki. And another way to see it is that because their devotion was so strong that they could even give up their bodies. We've already heard one of them gave up her body because she was forcibly restrained from. What kind of attraction is this? Does anyone have this attraction? Do we feel like this? Okay, let's make an experiment here. Everyone please chant with me. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, now what if the terrorists come and fill every doorway and start shooting? Would you chant the same way that you just chanted? See, this is alaukiki bhakti. These women were so determined that even they were forcibly physically restrained, but that wasn't enough. They just gave up the body, at least one of them, and joined Krishna for the purpose of joining Krishna. She was ready to give up her body even. Therefore, this bhakti is called alaukiki. Or, finally, there's another suggestion given here by Sanatana Goswami. They had such extraordinary symptoms of prema, such as laughing and crying, at the kind of thing that we hear in Srimad Bhagavatam 11th Canto, Chapter 2, text number 40. Who knows it? Evam vrata swapriyanama kirtya jatanurago trudha chittamagna uchaihi hasatyato rauti gayati unmadavan vrityati lokabahyaha. Srila Prabhupada translates that as, when a person is actually advanced and takes pleasure in chanting the holy name of the Lord, who is very dear to him, he's agitated and loudly chants the holy name, Hare Krishna! Hare Krishna! He also laughs, cries, becomes agitated, and chants just like a madman, not caring for outsiders. Kind of makes you think of Indra, doesn't it? and 6 p.m. So, Jiva Goswami, on this verse, faithfully repeats everything that Sanatana Goswami said. Doesn't really add anything new, but Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, although these women were their wives, after they realized what was happening here, these Brahmins considered their wives to be like their gurus. And they criticized themselves for their own lack of devotion. The Krishna Bhakti, or the pure devotion that these ladies had, was impossible in ordinary society. This is how Jiva Goswami takes this alaukiki bhakti. Impossible. When you have bhakti that's impossible, basically, by all ordinary considerations, then maybe you can imitate these ladies. So, alaukikim lokeshu asambhavam. This is his exact words. Lokeshu asambhavam. Impossible. It's quite clear. Baladev Vidyabhushan concurs with his guru, naturally. He says the same thing. So, we've already mentioned. The significant points here is that we're dealing with Bhagavan Krishna. The bhakti of these women is alaukiki, and therefore the Brahmins are feeling remorse. Feeling such remorse, what happens next? In text 40 we see that the Brahmins considered 5 things to be measures of success. Good birth, initiation or samskars by extension, keeping vows, ample knowledge, and to be expert. Here it means clearly to be expert in rituals, ritual activity. We'll hear what some of our acharyas have to say about these things. But it brings to mind the whole situation here, at least to my mind, it brings to mind the opinion of Narad Muni, who says, Aradhito yadi haras tapasat tatakyam, naradhito yadi haris tapasat tatakyam. Antar bahir yadi haris tapasat tatakyam, nantar bahir yadi haris tapasat tatakyam. This is the position of the devotee. If a devotee has worshipped Hari nicely, then what is the need for him to perform austerities? And if a devotee has not worshipped Hari nicely, then what is the point in him performing austerities? The whole point of the austerity is to bring you to this surrender. This is the purport. And if internally and externally you're perceiving nothing but Krishna, then what do you need to perform austerities for? And until you're actually in that point, maybe then you need austerities. But what can austerities alone do? They can't do you any good. We need something else. We've heard already. We need mercy. Actually, I was looking at this word, considering the meanings. Anutap, Srila Prabhupada translates this word in some contexts. Anutap meaning mercy. If you come to your senses and recognize what a fool I've been all this time, and how many wrong things I've done to others and to myself even, Anutap, this is mercy if you can see properly, finally. It's mercy. All right, so. In the 11th canto, chapter 2, text 36, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he's quoted a very nice verse to make an equally important point here that we can consider. Archayetva tu govindam tadiyan archayetu yaha nasa bhagavato jneyah kevalam dambhikaha smritaha. What does it mean? The one who performs worship of Lord Govinda but fails to worship his devotees should be understood to be not a devotee of the Lord, but simply a victim of false pride. So the Brahmins, what did they do when the boys first approached them, begging in the name of Balaram? What did they do? They ignored them. This is an offense. three kinds of offense, right? There's a mental offense, there's a verbal offense, and there's a physical offense. We've learned this from Parigu Muni. There's a reason every deity of Krishna has a little footprint here. At least the ones that you buy here in Vrindavan, they have. Long story we won't go into, but this is the point. You have to worship not only Krishna, but the devotees. And they didn't do this either. They not only not worshiping Vaishnavas, they're not even worshiping Krishna. They're so overwhelmed by their feeling by their delusion. So dig janmanas trivradyata dig vratam dig bahugyatam dig kulam dig kriyadaksham vimukhaye twadhokshaje. So finally they've come to their senses and they're vilifying their so-called qualifications. They say the bigger they are, the harder they fall. If you have so many great non-devotional qualifications, but you keep them non-devotionally, then those things just become a heavy burden. And when you're trying to swim across the ocean of material existence, they pull you down and you will sink. All of us have some qualification. I mean, it's natural. Srila Prabhupada says everyone has some qualities and everyone has some flaws also. So whatever abilities we have, whatever qualifications we have, we got to surrender those. Not invest them in the false pride account, but we have to give them to the Krishna Balaram PayPal account. So the other day on Radhashtami, Dharmaatma Prabhu was very kind enough to invite us to take prasadam in the new Govinda's extension. And this is your tax dollars at work, so to speak. And I was just admiring. Everything was first class in the place. Everything, nice chairs, beautiful lights, ceiling clean. Very nice facility because of the transcendental intelligence of Panchagoda Prabhu. And prasadam on top of that. So then I looked at my body and I just thought, this thing is rotten and it's getting old and just, it just doesn't match. So this is the thing. We have to, whatever we get, we do get things and we lose things also, but everything comes and goes. This is another factor to consider. We may even have some opulences, but not forever, my friend. What is it? The American poet Robert Frost, he put it very nicely. Nature's first green is gold. Before springtime, you have autumn, and the leaves turn gold. Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaf is a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf. So Eden sank to grief. Thus dawn goes down to day, nothing gold can stay. Maybe you have to understand English. To understand poetry is the hardest part of understanding any language. So the point that he's making is, Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityur dhruvam janma marthasya cha ityadi. Not only taking birth, but anything in this world it comes. So we get some opulences. While we have them in our possession, we have to do the right thing with them. Don't be criminal. Give them to Krishna. And then that is your success. Because otherwise you're going to lose it anyways. Zarur. So, how do we get on this point? They're condemning their opulences because they consider them to just be a heavy burden. They had not surrendered those things to Krishna. In fact, they offended Krishna. This is one of the points brought out by other commentators, but let's see what Sanatana Goswami says. They condemn their accomplishments by increasing degrees. So we mentioned 5 things. Anybody can see the board? What's the first one? Janma. More important than Janma, what's next? Initiation. And what's after initiation? Let me go back to the verse. I haven't memorized it yet. Vratam, bahugyatam, kulam, and kriyadaksham. Each of these is more powerful than the previous one, according to Sanatana Goswami. Now, Sridhar Swami, I skipped over Sridhar Swami. He's actually commented here. Trivit shauklam savitram daiksham iti trigunitam janma. Vratam, well, let's go one at a time. He says the 3 types of qualified births are birth by semen, birth by Gayatri Mantra, and by initiation. This is a point to consider here, initiation. But that's the second point, Savitri, Gayatri, to receive the Gayatri. So what about initiation? Anybody have any comments about this? One, we're talking about Gayatri Mantra, receiving the Gayatri initiation, twice born. And the other one is ritual initiation. If you perform some ritual, there's an initiation involved. That's called Ritvij. That's the only traditional definition of Ritvik, actually. Novel definition of Ritvik began around 1980. It was created as usual by the Americans. Prabhupada said this is the American disease. You have to just, take anything and change it. Whatever you, stand on your head, walk with your hands backwards, do anything you have to do, but change. This is the American disease, he said. So if anyone has studied American religious history, then you know already Americans can be astonishingly creative when it comes to theology, and this is not ended yet. It's still going on every day. We also have to be careful of this. It's been seen even in ISKCON. So Ritvik actually means this ritual initiation. It doesn't mean anything else, despite what someone else might try to claim. So, all right, so this is the first thing. Trivit Janma. 3 kinds of birth. And then Vratam refers, he says, Vratam Brahmacharyam. Particularly, any Vrata is there. Everybody takes vows. What do the men only are brahmacharis? Women, no such thing. But what is their Vrata? For the men, the Vrata is that do not waste your semen. It is so valuable. Do you know how long it takes to produce even 1 drop? And people are so irresponsible. And they hurt themselves, even their health suffers. So that's from Ayurvedic perspective and from the male perspective. But for the women, what is their Vrata? Who knows? According to the Dharma Shastra, what is a woman's only responsibility in life? What is it? Chastity. They get the equal benefit if they can remain chaste that the men get from practicing brahmacharya. It's not, of course, maybe not entirely a physical process, or maybe it is. I don't know. You can ask a yogi or an Ayurvedic Kaviraj. But this is the received wisdom. So vratam brahmacharyam. And if you're in a female body, you can think chastity. Kriya karmani dakshyam cha. And kriya dakshyam means in ritual activity, fruitive activities, karmani. That he makes clear here. Kriya dakshyam, it's taken as one word. Dhik iti adhikshepe. He uses the word dhik here in contempt. Adhikshepa means to throw it down, to get rid of it, to be ashamed of it. This is what they're thinking, like this. Why? Ye vayam tu adhokshaje vimukhas. We were opposed to Lord Adhokshaja. Tesham janmadi tat sarvam dhikiti vyagarhayan iti arthaha. Means, therefore, they just, to hell with all of it. They were ashamed of everything they'd accomplished in life. It can come to that point. If you're smart and if you're blessed, it's not enough just to be wise, but there has to be some mercy there to bring us to our senses. So this is what Sridhar Swami says. Sanatana Goswami says, We pointed out their increasing severity, the curses that they're giving here. And then he repeats the same thing. First birth is by the parents. Second is upanayanam, the sacred thread. Third is diksha for performing sacrifices. And that was their chief concern, actually. Now he says adhokshaja. What does adhokshaja mean? Adhokshaja. Beyond sensual perception. Yeah, this is the standard definition. But that's not what Sanatana Goswami says. Here he says adhokshaja indicates he who gives bliss to Mother Yashoda. How do you get that? Well, if you've been reading attentively, and if you're a Shrutidar and remember all the way back to the beginning of this canto, when Krishna kicked the cart, Shakatasura, he exploded the cart and the demon was forced out of that shelter. The gopis all came and they saw that this boy is as if saved from death. It's as if he's born again. Adhaha means below. Aksha means the axle of a cart also. Ja, and he's born again. Magic. So that's how he takes it here. And I'm not sure what his source is for this, but he says this is consistent with what's given in the Nirukti. I mean, grammatically, it certainly makes sense. You can't argue with it. But we find the same thing is there in the Lagu Bhagavatamritam of Rupa Goswami. Chapter 5, text 74 and 75. Dadrishur nihitam tatra rakshasim vanagocharaha punarjato yamityahur uktastasmarat hokshaja. Seeing the slain Rakshasi there, Putana, the forest people said, this boy has been born again. Because of this incident, he's called Adhokshaja. Esho dhaha shakatasyakshe punarjata ivetyataha adhokshaja iti prahur iti tika kritoditam. Okay, so he was, so to speak, reborn under the axle of the cart, and so the cowherds called him Adhokshaja. This explanation comes from the Tikakara. Who is the Tikakara? If you, in Sanskrit commentaries, if they just say the commentator says this, who are they talking about? By default, it should be understood Sridhar Swami. That much respect Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had. If you just mention the commentator, then it's understood. It must be Sridhar Swami. And all the Goswamis, everybody ever since, they also accept Sridhar Swami's commentary in this way, because his commentary is the oldest that we have still on the Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is Sridhar Swami's opinion. Now Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu is also the late, great Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu. It's such a loss to this movement. I remember when I was a student of Sanskrit, he told me that he was explaining to me this word tik, and he referenced this very verse that we're discussing today. So Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu has described this. Putana disguised herself as a beautiful gopi so she could approach Krishna and offer to nurse him. When she arrived, Yashoda and other simple cowherd women did not stop her because she looked like Goddess Lakshmi. At that time, baby Krishna was lying in a crib underneath the axle or the aksha of the cart because he seemed to be reborn, punarjata. After the attack of this poison-bearing witch, the village women gave him the name Adhokshaja. Adhokshaja, of course, is one of Krishna's eternal names, and for other reasons, it's also one of Lord Narayana's eternal names as well. Srila Sridhar Swami wrote a commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam before the time of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya accepted his authority as impeccable, and his followers often respectfully referred to him as simply the commentator, Tikakara. We've already explained this. Now, elsewhere in the Lagu Bhagavatam, the same book, Rupa Goswami explains why Lord Narayana is called Adhokshaja. Satchit ananda rupatvat syat krishnodhokshajot yasao nija shaktehe prabhavena swam bhaktan darshayet prahu. This is from the Padma Purana he's quoting. Because his form is composed of eternity, knowledge, and bliss, Krishna is adhokshaja. We only perceive temporary, ignorant, and miserable things. We don't perceive too much Satchidananda. So that's why he's called adhokshaja. If you're trying to see Krishna on this mundane platform, it's not going to work. By the influence of his own potency, he reveals himself to his devotees. And Gopi has written a commentary here, as he also says, in relation to Krishna, the power of the eyes and other senses to perceive, akshaja jnana, becomes insignificant, adhakrita. He can be seen only by those with pure devotion. So aksha means what else? Besides the axle of a cart? Eyes. Ankh. So akshaja means what is born of your eyes. In other words, seeing is not believing. They say visual perception, akshaja. And adha means to push it down. Actually, Gopi is explained like this also. It pushes down the importance of that kind of perception because you can't have him. He's not going to reveal himself. Naham prakasha sarvasya yoga maya samavrita ityadi. So this is adhokshaja. It's an eternal name of Lord Vishnu, Narayana, also, for this reason, because Narayana is also, he's beyond the reach of our mundane senses. Swayameva spurati. He will reveal himself when he damn well pleases, and not before then. So you have to please him sincerely, and he knows. And when he's pleased, then he reveals himself in the most unimaginable ways. These Brahmins could never have imagined that they would meet God in this way. They could never have imagined it. And maybe it's so with us as well. We don't know. How is Krishna going to show himself? When, where, why? We can't answer these questions. Therefore we say causeless mercy. There's no cause here. Ahaituki bhakti to hai or ahaituki kripa. It's causeless mercy. So, Jiva Goswami says, they were inimical to the Lord who appears repeatedly. Adhokshaja, apparently that's the way he takes it. They condemn their births as Brahmanas. The Brahmins are suitable to be devotees. Actually, the Brahmins are very exalted. If you read in the 5th canto, you can hear from Rishabhdev how he's praising the Brahmins. It really is quite an achievement, actually. We mentioned these 5 things that impressed those Brahmins. They are actually impressive things if you can do them. If you can gain those qualifications, it really is an accomplishment. Because it enables you to take advantage of mercy when that mercy comes through no agency of your own. So, kim punar brahmana punya bhakta rajarshiyas tatha anityam sukham lokam imam prapya bhajaswamam. Jiva Goswami quotes chapter 9, text 33, Bhagavad-Gita. What to speak of devotees who are pure Brahmins or kings? This implies, naturally, therefore, that having come into this impermanent world of little happiness, worship me and quickly attain me. So the Brahmins condemn themselves because although they were Brahmins, they were not devotees, at least not yet. Now, Gayatri Mantra, according to Jiva Goswami and others, Agni Purana also, there's an explanation of the Gayatri Mantra. Since we're talking about 3 births, the second of which is Gayatri birth, since Gayatri indicates only the Lord, by offending Krishna, they also offended that Gayatri Mantra. This is Jiva Goswami's insight on the strength of the Agni Purana, which he quotes. Evidence that Gayatri indicates the Lord is found in the Gayatri embedded in the 1st verse of the Bhagavatam. He says this also, which spreads the Lord's glories. And that Gayatri again indicates the Supreme Lord is explained in Agni Purana. Yatra adhikritya Gayatrim varnyate dharma vistaraha vritrasura vadhopetam tad bhagavatam ishyate. Brahma spoke the Bhagavatam in which the killing of Vritrasura is described and in which, after starting with Gayatri, dharma, is elaborately described. This he's quoting. They condemned their third birth since after they had worshipped other deities. Even after they took this second birth, first of all, they're praising these things. Again, it's in order of importance. 3 things: the birth, the initiation, and the ritualism in their minds. So the birth is condemned because they didn't become devotees. The Gayatri is condemned because it's supposed to make you meditate on Krishna, and they didn't do that. So they offended Gayatri Mantra. This is the point. And then he goes on to say, Jiva Goswami, the third birth, they condemn that, the ritual initiation, because after they had worshipped other deities, they still didn't understand the truth. What is that truth that they did not understand? He quotes to tell us. Bhagavad-Gita chapter 9, text 24. Chapter 9 is worthy of memorization. If you haven't done it already, it's a good idea. It's the most important part of Bhagavad-Gita. Aham hi sarva yajnanam bhokta cha prabhureva cha natumam abhijanati tatvenatascha vantite. I'm the enjoyer. I'm the master of the sacrifices. Those who don't know me as such will continue to take birth again. And you can't stay a Brahmin forever, I'm sorry. You may be a big Bhattacharya or Iyengar or whatever you are now, but you can't keep that position. We've already concluded. Jatasya hi dhruvam mrityur dhruvam janma martasya cha. Everything that comes goes. So while we have the chance, and if we get the chance, this is what we have to remember. We don't want to continue to take births going up and down, because you will go up and you will go down also. Both will be there for sure. Instead, better to actually realize that Krishna is the real enjoyer. He's the real Lord of sacrifices. So vows, knowledge, family lineage, expertise, and rituals, they were all condemned because they had been devoid of devotion up until this point. But they were reformed, reformed Brahmins, we say. So they're coming to the kind of the realization that we hear from Narottam Das Thakur. Nitai nabu lilo mukhe majilo samsara sukhe she pashu baro durachar she sambandhana hija britha janmo gelo tar vidya kule ki kori betar vidya kule ki kori betar. Finally, and I'll end here, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur said, he repeats the same information that we've received already from everyone else, 3 births and their significance. We may be expert in nitya and naimitika kriyas, but it's all useless because we were not surrendered to Krishna. This maybe needs some explanation, although we don't have a lot of time. Nitya kriyas means fruitive activities, mundane activities that are enjoined in Shastra. Because they're enjoined in Shastra, you have to do them. You don't have a choice. Well, you have a choice, but you have to eat the consequences, as Lochan Das Thakur says, and others. Punjana evatma kritam vipakam. So it's intelligent to follow what the Vedas enjoin and not neglect that. That's called nitya kriyas, just like rising early before sunrise, taking a bath, etc., etc. These are human activities. You cannot cultivate Krishna consciousness without doing these things. Anything that is enjoined for a human being to do as dharma, you have to do it. If you neglect it, you are jeopardizing your Krishna consciousness because you are polluting your human status. You become, as he said already, She Pashu Bada Durachar. You become a Dvipada Pashu. Now, Naimitaka Kriyas means things that you don't necessarily have to do every day, but you do them from time to time, just like a samskar. Wedding, Vivaha samskar is one of them. You don't do it every day, unless you're Balaji. But these Brahmins are condemning that all this stuff is a waste of time. So, Narottam Das Thakur says, Haridashi adi bhule mohotsabayadi kare naheri no sheishu kabilash kimora dukhera katha janma goino britha dhigi dhigi narottama das. Dhigi dhigi narottama das. He says the same thing. What does it mean? Such a strong attachment I've developed for fruitive activities due to material enjoyment. We're worse than this. We are worse than this. He's lamenting that he was attached to karma, but we're not attached to karma. What are we attached to? Vikarma. How fallen have we become? We're not humans yet. Unless and until we actually follow very nicely what the Shastra tells us. But even if we follow, it's not enough. Shama eva hi kevalam agar bhakti naiho. So, due to material enjoyment, I become cripple-minded and have no attraction for association with devotees. How will I be delivered, he says. If only I could hear the conclusion set forth by Srila Sarup Damodar Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, Rup Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Gopal Bhatta Goswami, and Lokanath Goswami, then the internal pains of my heart would be cured. I didn't take birth when Gaur Nityananda and the devotees headed by Advaita appeared in Nadia. What is the use of my body now? I'm simply carrying the burden of this body around, and we already described it, will sink us. I could not see the ecstatic pastimes of Haridas Thakur or other wonderful festivals performed by the Vaishnavas. Therefore, Narottam Das Thakur says, shame on me, I passed my life uselessly. Now, I cannot resist one last shloka and then it's over, so please be patient. Yesham Shrimad Yashoda Sutapada Kamala Nasti Bhaktir Naranam. Somebody may know this verse, it's famous, Subhashita. Yesham Abhira Kanya Priyaguna Kathane Nanurapta Rasagnya. Yesham Shri Krishna Leela Shravana Rasakatha Naiva Karnaturopi Dhiktan Dhiktan Dhigetan Kathayati Satatam Kirtanasto Mridangaha. For those who have no devotion unto the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, the son of Maya Yashoda, and for those who have neither taste nor attachment for describing the wonderful qualities of Srimati Radharani, and for those who never even lend a respectful ear to hearing about these topics, for them, the mridanga in the kirtan simply says, Diktam, Diktam, Digetan. It's a pun. It means to hell with you, to hell with it, to hell with all of you. We know, and the musicians know, that in mridanga you have the bulls. So Digetan are the bona fide, proper Pakawaj bulls. Mridanga, maybe they also have it. Shrikol. Diktam, Digam, Digetan. So he's a double entendre here. So this is the point. If you're not a devotee, you don't get it. The kirtan is not just about the mridanga and the kartals. Keep it in mind. We tend to be loud with our instruments. Okay, so this is the point. They're feeling remorse now, and we will see what they have to say in the coming verses. But finally, they've come to this realization. And we should also think, if this is what they're saying with all of their qualifications, and what about the rest of us? How should we be feeling? Thank you all very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Go Premanandi. Any questions or comments? We're pretty tight on time, but maybe one I'll take. Chashmawala has a question.
Thank you for a very systematic class. My question is regarding the hierarchy given of these 5 terms.
Yes.
I'm surprised how Kulam was placed higher than initiation, Vratas, and even Jnana.
Because through socialization, Kula means socialization. Those of us who had not had this great fortune that many of you have, to be born in a traditional family that understands dharma and understands what to do and what not to do on the basis of Shastra, or at least on the basis of a family tradition that you may not understand with respect to Shastra, but at least you get some clue as to what to do. It is such an advantage. The rest of us have to fight for decades to overcome the conditioning that pushes us down all the time. So it really is very practical to have the advantage of what do they call it, social, some kind of family aristocracy or something, if you have a good family. Krishna himself says in Bhagavad-Gita, it is the result of an unsuccessful punya performed in the past, but it will help you. Definitely is an advantage. Yesham tvantagatam papam. You know the verse. So, chapter 7, text 28. Is that okay? Anything else in this regard? Because there's 5 items. Otherwise, this Prabhuji has another question, and then I promise we'll stop, because I'm sure everyone is hungry. There are 2 other questions, sorry. Go ahead, but be quick. Mike Kolo.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. It is said that when somebody is having his Brahminical initiation at a time that he's virgin, he's born again. So is it that at the time of his sacrifice, performing sacrifices that you told, there's an initiation for the vow they take. So is it that they are born again?
Yes, free birth. Yes, free birth. Shukra, Savitri, and Diksha. It's considered a third birth. You had a question quickly?
So, many times Prabhupada says that there is this bodily existence, one gradual platform, mental platform, intellectual platform, and spiritual platform. In Bhagavad-Gita 2.42 also, towards the end of the Prabhupada says the whole spiritual process depends on realizing that we are not the body.
Yes.
Obviously, the Brahmins, they had such qualifications, so at least they knew theoretically or even practically, but they couldn't surrender. But the wives, they surrendered. So my question is, were they also, but they were uneducated, but were they also realizing that they are not the body and they have deep level of existence, like up to spiritual?
Brahman realization, which is the idea that I'm not this body, that is a tremendous advantage because you're immediately qualified for pure devotional service. If you choose it, but they didn't choose it. The women chose, but the husbands didn't choose. They were attached to something else. So, they were not Brahman realized, that's for sure. But even if they were Brahman realized, still you have to go further. You have to go into bhakti. This is the point of chapter 18. Brahmabhuta prasannatmana shochiti nakankshati. At that point you get param bhaktim. Real bhakti, transcendental bhakti. That's only possible on the liberated platform. So, is that answering your question or no? Or maybe I'm not getting your question.
Yeah, I want to know more about the attitude of or the realization of the wives.
Okay. Well, the women, they loved Krishna because they were simple. Sometimes you have to be simple. The gyan is not enough. That's another thing. The Brahmins have that amply. But the heart has to be purified. And for that you have to be a devotee. If you're not a devotee, your heart will not be pure. Manorathenasiti dhavato bahi. And study the commentaries on that verse. It's quite extensive. So how do we purify the heart? In the satsanga, we perform the chanting, congregational chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And then maybe I should surrender actually. we get the clue. Sorry? No, everything will become automatic, yes. Jnana Vairagya, they both come, that we learned from the first canto, through bhakti alone. So there's no need to do anything else. But you should understand that bhakti without jnana and vairagya, it's not really bhakti. It's bhakti abhas. It's pseudo bhakti, or at worst, it's sahajya bhakti, which is even worse. So it's at best immature, and it's at worst cheating. So yes, we have to develop these qualities. We have to become real Brahmins, and we have to actually gain knowledge, and all these things are important. We shouldn't leave them by the wayside. But we should understand that they should definitely lead us to bhakti. Otherwise, we're wasting our time. Shama evahi kevalam. Is that okay? Okay, so we have to stop now. Thank you all very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.